All right, everybody, welcome back into another Auburn Live football show. I am Justin Hokanson, joined as always by Cole Pinkston. Cole, what's up, man? How you doing?
Uh, a little bit concerned after doing the scouting report on California's offense, but
Uh-oh.
other than that, pretty fired
Uh-oh.
up about an away game at 9:30 Central.
Latest, I think it's one of the latest games they've ever played. One of the latest
Last
kickoffs they've ever played.
Was it last year LSU or 2 years ago LSU was like at 8 Central?
Yeah, there was an LSU game. It was the Bo Nix game. I think
Yeah,
20 was that 21? 21.
2021. Yeah,
That went late. I remember working very late into the night on that one.
yeah.
Um, All right, let's get into this before we do real quick. Shout out to Session Cocktails, downtown Auburn, sponsor of the show. Go check them out. Next to Taco Mama right there on Magnolia. Awesome happy hour drinks. They just changed up their entire menu, by the way. So if you've been there before, go check them out. You can still get anything you want. You can still get drinks that you had in the past that you like, but they just changed up their menu and added a bunch of new stuff. And so go check them out. They do a cocktail for a cause. It's always a pretty cool deal. And like we always talk about, it's bar seating and lounge seating, and so you're not standing around and things like that. So go check them out. It'll be an awesome place to go have a drink and watch a late night game if you're in Auburn. Go up there and have a drink at 8:39 after dinner or something like that, and watch a little bit of the game if you want. But check them out, Session Cocktails in downtown Auburn. Well, Cole, yeah, you mentioned Cal. You know what's funny about this Cal game is, and this always happens, right? Like preseason, I feel like fans look at the schedule and they're like, "Oh, I mean, that's a win. That's a win. That's a win. 8 wins.
Yeah.
Auburn get 8 wins, right?" And then when the season comes and this Cal game comes, like nobody was talking about Cal among Auburn fans, whether it's our board or wherever. Um, Many Auburn fans, nobody was talking about Cal. Like that's a win. Now it's game week. That tone's changing a little bit. And I don't know if it's nerves of a road game or you see Cal put up almost 700 yards of offense. Um, Maybe it's a little concerns over Auburn's defense, but all of a sudden, game week comes and you're like, Auburn's a 5-point favorite, things like that. So all of a sudden, you start to get nervous, like you kind of just talked about a little bit. You get a little bit nervous about it. So what do you think about that, Cole? Are you more nervous about this game? I shouldn't say nervous. It doesn't matter if they win or lose to you, but are you more concerned about Auburn's opportunities to win this game, chances of winning this game now than you were 3 weeks, a month ago?
Well, it does matter to me because it certainly helps with my job with recruiting when Auburn's winning.
Well, yeah,
So
but you don't need to be nervous. You're not playing,
no.
you
I
know.
mean, look, I'm concerned for Auburn
Yeah.
because California's offense is good, man. I mean, I'd start with their offensive line. Nobody's talking about that. They got a senior, a redshirt junior, a sixth-year senior, and a redshirt junior with one sophomore. But that sophomore started all 12 games as a freshman. So I don't know. I mean, there's probably not too many more experienced offensive lines like that in the country, as experienced as them. Their center, Matthew Cindric, who is the sixth-year senior, has started the most games by any California player ever, 33.
Wow.
So, and he's questionable, by the way. That's the interesting thing here. If he doesn't play, that's going to help Auburn a lot. But their offensive line's good, and I think that has a lot to do with a good running back room too. Jaden Ott, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Here's the list of awards he's up for: Doak Walker, Maxwell, Polynesian College Football Player of the Year award, Walter Camp. He's up for all those, and he was a preseason All-American. He had 188 yards in the first game for Cal. So that's a guy that's ridiculous. I've watched him. I think he's an excellent running back, one of the best in the country. And then behind him, a guy named Isaiah Ifons. I'm not sure, Zach, you know about this guy. Montana State broke all the records there. Had almost 4,000 yards rushing in his career at Montana State. Now he's with California, and he had a good first game for them. So running back room is tough. Offensive line is veteran. Receivers, they got some big receivers who made some big plays in that first game. I feel more concerned about this matchup after watching their first game and seeing what they have. And there you go. Zach said he's a problem talking about Ifons, the backup running back. So, yep. They got some weapons.
Yeah, I mean, almost 700 yards of offense. Clearly a dangerous team against an Auburn defense that's still, jury's out. Jury's out in terms of certainly the rush defense, and you pair up Jay Knott with that, and all of a sudden you're looking at that going, okay, they're probably going to run the ball a little bit. They're going to come out and try to run the ball on Auburn. You liked Auburn's ability to create some turnovers, so maybe they can do that again. But yeah, I think Cal's offense combined with some uncertainty about Auburn's defense, and then I would say a limited passing game in that opener, not exactly knowing what Auburn's passing game could look like if it's opened up. All those things sort of, I think, culminate in a game where you go in wondering what's going to happen. Not exactly sure. I think you feel like Auburn can run the ball. You feel like Cal's probably going to run the ball a little bit. It's a tricky logistics game across the country, week 2, with new staff, new players, new everybody. So there's just some things outside of even on the field that make that mentally a tough game. And then you have a dangerous Cal offense that if they start to score a little bit, right out the gate, can Auburn's offense, are they in position in game 2 to go outscore somebody? Are they cohesive enough? Do they know what they're doing enough? Is there enough, unity in the pass game? You think about some of the decisions Peyton Thornton made that Hugh Freeze wasn't happy about. You think about not opening up the passing game yet. They're going to have to do that Saturday. There's just a lot that if Cal starts to score a little bit, Auburn's going to have to hang with them right out of the gate with a lot of new pieces and a lot of unknowns. And I think that's what makes you go into this game unsure. I think Auburn could go score 38 and at Cal and win the game and beat the spread. Like I think Auburn could go win this game, 38-24 or something. It could be 31-24. I guess I think Auburn can hold them under 28. I hope so, because the rest of the schedule, for Auburn's sake, the rest of the schedule is pretty good offenses. So not saying Cal's not a good offense, but if you go give up 30 to Cal and you still got to play Georgia, Bama, LSU, Arkansas, Ole Miss, like I guess you're going to be looking at some games where you better score 40 to win. And so I think there's some of those unknowns make you go into this game a little nervous, a little not nervous, but a little weary of what will Auburn look like. Because the bottom line is we didn't see a lot against UMass. UMass is not good. That's not a good roster. You blew them out. You did exactly what you're supposed to do. You didn't need to throw downfield. You aligned improperly 15 different times and it didn't matter. And so you just didn't come away knowing more or less about Auburn, really. They didn't. I mean, you just didn't. UMass isn't good enough for you to come away from that game knowing more about Auburn. They're not good enough to test or challenge Auburn in that way. So when you listen to Hugh Freeze, he says, we got away with these things in game 1. We won't get away with them in the future. But he's saying we got away with them in game 1 because of who we were playing. And so that's why it's hard to take a lot from what you saw from Auburn. So it's just kind of that perfect game 1, game 2 scenario against an opponent that's dangerous, and you just don't know enough about your team yet, but you're about to find out. You're about to find out a lot more.
So to me, the linebackers were the biggest glaring issue for Auburn's defense, even more so than the defensive line. And in this game, honestly, I don't think UMass did not run right at Auburn. That was not their game plan. They went to the perimeters, the edges, and they had a lot of success doing that. Cal's not really like that, at least from what I could tell from the first game. They trust Jaden Ott. They trust their offensive line to run between the tackles. They're a zone run team, so it's they try to keep it inside like that. And it's not going to be so much the eyes with Auburn's linebackers this week getting crossed up with their eyes. I think it's more of a test of will. Like you're going to have some offensive linemen in your face a couple times. Can you fight through that and stop some plays there? That's my biggest concern on the defensive side for Auburn. Are the linebackers good enough in the box to be able to stop this run game? And I don't know, because I think the key to beating California is going to be to put them in as many passing situations as you can, even though, and we didn't even talk about them, their quarterbacks are decent, both of them. Sam Jackson, the TCU transfer, he's not bad at all from what I could tell. Now he's questionable. The other guy, Ben Finley. Some of y'all might remember Ben Finley from NC State. led an overtime victory against North Carolina when North Carolina was 18th in the country. He looked really good doing it. So a couple of good quality quarterbacks, in my opinion, and both can throw the football really well. So even if you get them in passing situations, they're still going to be tough. I just think the offense is pretty well rounded for California, and that's why I'm a little bit concerned with Auburn's defense. And I already was concerned with Auburn's defense going in.
Are you so negative, Cole? Cole's always negative.
No,
I come on
I'm
here and try to be positive. Cole,
apparently
Cole's
no.
negative.
I'm only negative about Robbie Ashford, and I haven't even started talking about that yet. So
Shout out to our lovely, lovely subscribers. Listen, if you come on here and listen to us, if you want a place to just have sunshine pumped into your face, for me, you've come to the wrong place. You're not getting that from me. I'm going to be as fair as I can, both positive and negative. So if you come on here and you want to hear about all the great things that Auburn did against UMass, we'll talk about that. But we'll also talk about the fact that UMass is terrible and Auburn made a bunch of mistakes and left a lot of things in the playbook, which is cool. We'll find out. But I think we're going to try to shoot you straight always. We're not going to sit here and tell you all based on that game, Auburn's going to go win 9 games. Like, how could you say that? Based on what? I mean, there's just nothing you could take from that game to me to be like, oh, in 9 games, Auburn's on their way to 9 wins. I mean, I don't know how you could say that. Look at the rest of the schedule. Everybody else blew everybody out on their schedule, with the exception of LSU. Boy, they got humbled.
well, I mean, tough matchup.
Humbled. And Florida State looked good. Yeah, LSU is not bad. Florida State they caught fire. What was surprising about that, by the way, was LSU it just kept getting worse. LSU didn't fight back, stop the momentum, maybe go get a score. It just, boy, that thing snowballed. Yeah, it'll be an interesting game. Auburn has never won in the state of California. Do you know that?
How many times have they actually played in the state of California? I mean, it can't be too long.
I tweeted it the other day and I forgot. They are 0-3 all time in California.
I guess is that counting the
yes,
the national or whatever? Yeah, the national championship.
Yeah, they lost to Santa Clara in 1936. Everybody knows Santa Clara dynasty. USC in 2002 touchdown loss. Auburn goes out there. Carnell cramps up, and Auburn loses to USC at the beginning of their little dynasty run. And then Florida State in the 2014 BCS championship game. Auburn is 0-2 on the road against current members of the Pac-12. They lost at Southern Cal, and they lost at Arizona years ago. I don't even know the date. But they're 10-3 overall against the Pac-12. So they've got a pretty good record. But, yeah, they got a chance to make a little bit of history, win their first road game against a current member of the Pac-12 and win their first football game in the history of the program in the state of California. So it'd be nice to make a little bit, as Bruce Pro would say, make some history. Make some history. That's what Hugh Freeze should be telling them. Guys, go make history. You can do something nobody's ever done. As minor or major, whatever you want to make of it, it would be a history-making win. It gives Auburn the first win in the state of California ever. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be a pretty cool moment, I think, to go and beat Cal. Cal's, by the way, Cal and UMass were both teams Auburn had never faced in the history of their program, and now they're facing them back to back. You mentioned Ashford. We talked to Hugh Freeze on Monday, and he's pretty hard on the quarterbacks, man. Pretty hard on the quarterbacks. Said he wants 100% correct decision making from his quarterbacks, at least high 90s. I mean, the expectations can't get much higher than don't ever be wrong. And I think mainly what he's talking about is, or he said specifically in that RPO game, some decisions could be subjective. Like, well, you threw this fade and I get why you saw it and maybe it could have been completed, but the RPO game, it should be clear. Like, you're reading the defense and there's a right call and a wrong call, for Freeze. And there were a couple of times where Thorne it twice on one drive, which is what resulted in Hugh Freeze throwing his headset down after the second time Peyton Thorne did it, was just simply making the wrong read. He handed it off once when he should have thrown, where the safety crashed down, and he handed it off anyway. And then he pulled it and threw when he should have handed off. which those are the things that this offense is built on. You have to make the right decision on those because you're reading the defense, and if you read it wrong, it's just going to be in trouble. So I mean, Freeze was critical of Thorne, said he played solid, said he played well, and then talked about Robbie Ashford a little bit. Said obviously that was part of the game plan to get him in the red zone, and use him in the way that they used him. I think that's going to be Ashford's role. Like I think it's pretty clear what his role is going to be. Short yardage runs or some red zone runs. It's pretty clear. It's going to be a change of pace, trying to out leverage the opponent in certain situations to run the football. And then, of course, you're going to have passes out of that. You're going to have times where they're going to bring Robbie in. They're going to hope the defense is ready for a run, and it's going to be a play action. And Robbie's going to throw the ball and take some shots. But what did you make of Hugh Freeze talking about the quarterbacks and specifically how hard he is on those guys and what his expectations are for those guys, especially Peyton Thorne, to be damn near perfect?
It should be. You should be 100% on making decisions or just shy of it, in my opinion. That doesn't mean that every throw is perfect.
Right.
That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about you made the correct read on this play because I have gone back and done almost a full half of the play script and looked at what they're calling, trying to figure out the offense. Whether I call it an RPO or not, everything's got a pass attachment to it.
Yeah.
Which means there's two kinds of RPOs. One, you have an RPO that happens after the snap, post snap. It depends on how the defense moves. Depends on this. You're riding. You got the ball in the stomach of the running back, and you're deciding: do I pull it and throw it? Do I pull it and run it? That's a post snap RPO, and then you have the pre snap RPOs. This is what Auburn's doing right now, for the most part. It means the quarterback is deciding what's going to happen before the ball is ever snapped. And this is where apparently Peyton Thorne didn't make all the perfect reads, and he made a couple of where, like you said, he should have handed it off. He should have thrown it, whatever the case. So those should be perfect. There's really no excuse. You have to get that perfect in order to be able to have a chance to win a football game from your quarterback. And, he puts Robbie Ashford in the game, and he lets him throw a little bit in the package. And I thought he did okay with the decision making when he was in at doing his what I would call his package, right? His set of plays that were designated for him. He throws a good screen. That was a good decision on that early in the game. Does a couple of other things. They gave him a run pass option to the perimeter where he's rolling out. That worked out pretty good. So obviously there's a couple things there that Hugh Freeze is not happy about and can't win you a game when an opposing offense is going to give you trouble, like I think it could this week.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to make, which is when the decision making that Hugh Freeze is talking about. There's a mental aspect and there's a physical aspect. Yeah. What Hugh Freeze is saying, mentally be on point. It's like a math problem. 2 + 2 is 4. Period. Right. It's never not 4. There's a right and a wrong. And so if that safety crashes, there's a right and a wrong decision. There's no subjectivity to that. And so that's what Hugh Freeze is talking about. That safety stays back. You should have handed it off. Why would you throw a fade route to Tyler Fromm when the safety's already back there? Give the ball. Like that. After that decision, there's other things that are that are out of your control. Ball floats a little bit. You're not going to complete every pass. Not everything's going to go your way after the play. But the decision to read it has to be on point. Because if you don't, you're going to be fortunate for the play to work. If you don't read that correctly, and what he's talking about, one of the times where Peyton handed it off, the safety was crashing down. The safety made the tackle at the line of scrimmage. I mean, of course he did. And so if you don't make the right call in that RPO game, your chances of that being a successful play are just going to be really low. So that's why that initial decision is so huge. It's just gonna set the play up essentially right off the bat for being a failure or not.
Yeah, and I think Peyton Thorne's got a higher percentage of getting those things right, and he's obviously done that in practice. That's why he was chosen to be the quarterback.
Right.
Now, having said that, I'd say this on Robbie Ashford's role. I think it increases a little bit this week, and that is only if Jarquez Hunter does not play, which we don't know one way or the other right now. I say if he doesn't play, you can see Robbie Ashford's role increase big time because when he's put in the game, it's about the run. That's what they're trying to do, but they don't want to be predictable, so they give him some RPOs and things like that, which is smart. If you're going to have that, you got to be able to do that. But I just expect, I expect to see his role increase. I really do, and I don't think that's Peyton Thorne's fault. I think that's because Robbie Ashford is a threat to score whenever he touches the ball.
Yeah, especially inside the 20, if you can keep being successful with quarterback sweeps, some zone read stuff, and there was some passing options there. Yeah, I think Ashford's role, it'll be interesting to see how that goes, and it'll be interesting to see how defense attack that, right? So that's on film now. So when Ashford comes into the game at the 23-yard line and you're driving, what does Cal do? And what do defenses do? Now that it's on film and they know when he comes in there, okay, guys, decent chance it could be a quarterback sweep, or how are they prepared? And I think it'll be interesting to see how teams adjust to that. We talked about Auburn defensively a little bit, and that the running game was suspect. I would say suspect. What was interesting about that game was the difference in the first and second half. Auburn only gave up about 20 yards rushing in the second half. Most of K'Ron Adams' yards came in the first half. He only had about 17 yards in the second half. So the yards per carry was like near 7 in the first half for UMass, and it was like 2.5 in the second half. Obviously, the quarterback had a 30-yard run in the first quarter. That impacted things. It was kind of a blown assignment type deal from Auburn. So they settled in some, but UMass is not a good indicator, really. It was more of the fact that you gave up 100-yard rushers, not a great sign. We'll find out a lot more. You mentioned on Saturday against Jay Knott, but you mentioned the linebackers, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because you mentioned it. I wrote about it on Sunday. It was kind of one of my question marks, and even one of my predictions. Like, hey, this linebacker position is far from settled after what we saw on Saturday. I think I looked up the top 4 guys: Austin Keys, Cam Riley, Eugene Asante, and Larry Nixon. That's your top 4 linebackers. They had a total of 9 tackles in that game. That just seems to me, not sufficient at all for your top 4 linebackers in a quote unquote linebacker driven defense, which is what Robin Roberts called this defense. For your top 4 guys combined to only have 9 tackles is that can't be ideal. Larry Nixon had 0. Riley had 1. Those guys, and they all played about an even number of snaps. They all played about 20 snaps or so in the game. So you're talking about 80 something, whatever. So it's just, I think that's a big question mark. And I went into the season thinking defensive line was maybe a big question mark, especially depth. I thought linebacker was a kind of a little bit of an unknown, but I thought those guys were all capable. I thought defensive line to me was, I'm not sure if they've got the right bodies there, and that's still a question mark. But linebacker is probably the one position I come away after game 1 a little more concerned than I did going in. Keys is probably still a little bit bothered with that shoulder, maybe that right shoulder. But that position, man, I want to see something different on Saturday against Cal. I can't just see Eugene Asante being the only one that kind of flashes and that darts in the backfield and gets a sack. I got to see more from those guys making plays, attacking. You and I were up there. We saw one of those runs. I can't remember if I think it was Keys, where just sat back and waited on the pulling offensive lineman to come through and go get him and go block him. Keys moved into position and then just sat there and he caught the lineman. And that is not how you do it. That's just not how it's going to get done in the SEC. Am I overstating the concern with the linebackers, or do you come away going, ooh, think about SEC. Don't think about UMass or even Cal. Think about the SEC and what it takes to play linebacker and to get the job done in the SEC. And did you see enough on Saturday, or is that just now a major concern?
No, that was a big concern for me preseason. I had them ranked towards the end in my position unit rankings. I ended up putting them at 10th after fall camp and switching them with the safeties. So I was really worried about the linebackers for that reason. it's a hard position to play, especially in today's football. You're getting pulled all these different directions with all these RPOs, and then they'll run right at you, and you're so used to going sideline to sideline that it's hard to take on a block, and it takes a special player to play that position. And I'm not saying Auburn doesn't have one right now or doesn't have multiple, but they're not ready. It just doesn't look like they're ready for that action as a whole. And I don't think it's coaching. I think it just takes time, man. It takes time to figure that out. And they're new guys for the most part. All these guys didn't play a year ago, except for Cam Riley, who his eyes got crossed several times.
Mhm.
It just happens, okay? But it can't happen if you want to be successful on defense. Honestly, I felt pretty good about all the position groups going into the game on offense and felt pretty good about them exiting the game. Defense, I had concerns and left with the same concerns or more at every position unit.
Yeah.
Defensive line, linebacker, and secondary, by the way.
Yeah.
I think the secondary was a little bit suspect too. So
Yeah, gotta have Nehemiah Pritchett back. Got to get him back.
you do. Yeah. And that's, again, I said the corners were one of the middle of the pack units, and everybody's like, what are you talking about, man? DJ James, Nehemiah Pritchett. Yeah, but what happens if one of those guys goes down? You saw. They're not as strong without one of those two. And you got to have more than two. You have to. Canley, he'll be fine, but he's a freshman. First game action. It's going to take time. This is going to be a big test for him this week. So I'm concerned about the defense as a whole. I don't think it's going to be what it needs to be early in the season. The problem is you're going to hit a stretch of Georgia, LSU, and A&M where it needs to be, and it's not going to be, I don't think.
Yeah, the best takeaway coming off from the defense and projecting forward, if they can keep it going, the best thing about it was the negative plays they created in the 2 turnovers. That is going to be this defense has to do that. They are not going to be good enough to get by forcing no turnovers or creating maybe 4 to 5 havoc type plays, which havoc plays are everybody kind of defines. I don't know exactly how Roberts defines them, but they're, passes defended or, a turnover, a quarterback hurry, things like that. They're not going to get by if they don't do what they did, which is create about 10 type havoc plays a game and create a turnover or 2 a game. Doesn't have to be a pick 6. Doesn't have to be a touchdown. But they're going to have to force turnovers. They're not going to be good enough to just go out there, shut teams down 3 and out, stop them. They're going to give up yards, and they're going to give up some points, and they're going to have to get it back somewhere. They're going to have to get it back somewhere.
But this is where I am really pleased with the defensive scheme and play calling, because I think they understand what they have. I think they realize that, hey, like you just said, we can't go out there and force 3 and outs over and over. It is going to take that havoc. And I think this defensive staff understands that. It didn't take long at all. Okay, it's UMass, right? They could have played base defense and won the game, but UMass would have scored a couple more times, probably, if I had to guess. Ron Roberts, everybody up there who's calling plays on defense, said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take control here. And they did. And they started blitzing. They started getting Fumachan off of his platform. They started doing all these things to disrupt the offensive game plan on the other side. Yeah. So they didn't just sit back and take it, which honestly, I have seen that recently from Auburn defenses where here's the game plan. We're going to stay with it no matter what. And it probably was in the game plan to eventually open up these blitzes, but they went to it so quickly. I mean, it was the very next drive after that first drive that was terrible when they said, all right, well, we're going to unload on them. We're going to see what happens when we come after them. And it worked. And it's going to have some success in other big games too. It's going to be somewhat boom or bust this year for the defense. I think you're going to have some really big plays and turnovers like we saw, and then you're going to give up some really big plays.
Yeah,
it's just the way it's going to be. But this is not what I would call a bend, don't break defense. This is an attacking defense. And I think that's perfect for what you got.
Yeah. And I think you hit on a good point, which is understanding your personnel and understanding your identity. And I think Roberts gets it. I think that defense probably gets it, and understand where your weaknesses are and try to make up for it by attacking some. And it is what it is.
Right.
With that defense, it's going to be give some stuff. It's going to remind me a little bit of, when you watch Auburn play basketball and offense. There's going to be times you're going to go, like, what, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But then there's going to be times where that style is going to produce points and fast break. And like that style is going to produce good things too. It's going to be a little bit of both this year with that defense. And you're going to have to just sort of adjust and get used to it. And they're going to give up some stuff, but hopefully they can get it back with being overly aggressive. The one thing that we didn't talk about a ton that I wrote about at auburnlive.com today that is, a huge plus, and it's one of the things that I wrote about what we have learned, and that is the special teams in terms of the primary playmakers. Now, Hugh Freeze talked about they had some loafs late in the game, a couple missed tackles. They need to carry the energy throughout. But in terms of the primary playmakers on special teams, it's about as strong as a group top to bottom as I remember. You have Oscar Chapman, who's as reliable as it gets punting the football. Rarely is a team going to have a chance to return one ever. You have Alex McPherson, who, while young, has hit his 7 of his first 8 field goals, including 5 straight going back to last year. He's got range to 60, 65 yards. Phenomenal leg, a real weapon where you feel like you could attempt a 45, 47 yarder with him, and that is not even close to feeling like you're pushing him. It's kind of the way it was when you had Daniel Carlson back in the day, when you're like, well, if we just get to the 35, we'll kick a field goal. What a weapon that is. Think about if you get a good kick return or a turnover, and you're like, well, if we just got to the 30 or 35, we feel like we could get points. That's pretty awesome. So you have Chapman and Alex McPherson. Then you toss in Brian Batty, returning kicks, who you saw had a 40-yard return from 7 yards deep in the end zone. Great speed, well built for kick returns, fearless guy. He's going to pop some more kick returns. And then when Jarquez Hunter comes back, if he's back there with Batty, you're good. I mean, you got to kick it to one of them, and both those guys are going to be really dangerous. Then you go over to punt return, and you've got Keontae Scott, who had a 56-yarder and would have had another big. The other one was officially an 11-yard return, but that's only because he barely stepped out of bounds, tightrope on the sideline. That if he stays in, I mean, he tight roped and then he cut back across the field. That was going to be another big return. I mean, he almost had two big returns, for him in that game. And so I was just kind of thinking about it again, like special teams wise, you can't ask for much more in terms of punter, kicker, punt returner, kick returner. The only thing maybe is, McPherson wasn't booming him into the end zone. I don't know if that's going to kind of be where he's at, is kicking it to about the goal line or so. So they had a couple. He did kick some in the end zone, but there was some that got returned. So Auburn's kick return unit will have to be a little bit more on point. I'm not sure if McPherson's just going to boom them out of the end zone the way Carlson would. But overall, man, special teams, you've got playmakers at every one of those positions that can help you change a game. Hit a long field goal, return a big punt, return a kick, pin somebody inside the 20. You've got weapons at all 4 of those places that can help you win games.
Yeah, I think special teams is good. Obviously, that's a great way to steal some points on special teams that a lot of people don't think about. Look at Frank Beamer and how he did it at Virginia Tech, sort of, made a name for himself for doing that. But, I mean, yeah, in some ways, I thought Batti's role was even bigger as a special teams guy. I mean, he caught it with his foot almost on the line of the back of the end zone and said, all right, I'm taking it. First one. I'm not kneeling this. I'm not calling fair catch. I like that. I think that's, to me, a fair catch. Yes, you get it at the 25, but you're giving up a chance to go score. I mean, that doesn't look like the way they're going to do this. So they're going to return it if they get a shot. Even if it doesn't look right, they're going to return it. So that's good. And Keontae Scott, I think we were sitting up in the box when that first punt or whatever that big one was he had, it hit the ground and it bounced right into his hands. And I go, oh, yeah. I knew right when he caught it, like that was perfect, because now he's got a chance to survey everything and he's gonna break one here. And he did. He broke that one. It was great. So Yeah, we actually talked to him at the roundtable the other day about his punt returning, and he's like, he goes, last year I thought fair catching was a bad play. He's like, I thought that was wrong to fair catch the ball. And he got into a tight situation in the Alabama game a couple of times, right? So I think his philosophy's changed on that, and I think it's for the better. But he knows if he gets a shot at it, if he gets some room, there's a chance you're going to get some points out of it.
And he's so like it's the little things. That second return, if you go back and watch for people, the second return is one that was kicked away from him a little bit. It hit, and he had to chase it down a little bit. And even if you watch just how smart of a player he is, if you watch when he's chasing, when he's about to grab that ball, his back is to the defenders, and there's about 3 or 4 of them right on his tail. And he did something that I noticed rewatching it that was it's just pure instincts, which is he didn't just run, grab it, and then turn around and figure out what he's going to do. He literally, if you watch right before he grabs it, he kind of does a little bit of a fake to the right.
Yeah.
And then he grabs it going back to the left. And if you watch the defenders, when he kind of goes, he sort of sets them up like he's going to go right. And you can see him take a step, and then when he grabs it, he knows he's going left. It's like a point guard with the ball who is going to go one way and go the other. He's setting you up. That's what he did. He set him up, fakes one way, and then comes back and grabs it in one motion and goes the other way. That's what allowed him to turn the corner. It's what allowed those defenders to take one step in the wrong direction, and then they're like, oh, and it allows him to then turn on the speed, turn the corner. He's just such a smart, instinctive football player when it comes to making plays out there, whether it's at the nickel spot or whether it's returning punts.
Yeah, I'd love to see him get an interception or a fumble or a scoop and score. He's going to take it to the house if he ever gets his hands on it while he's on defense, I think.
I would think so. Him and Donovan Coffin were absolutely fantastic.
He was responsible, in my opinion, for the Jalen Simpson pick six that started the second half.
Yeah, for sure. Forced that. Absolutely forced that bad throw. Depth chart notes, just a few notes. Nothing changed on the depth chart. And Hugh Freeze has talked about like he doesn't like a depth chart, is what he said. He doesn't want to go into it and say, I have a starter here or there. Now, quarterback's different. But in terms of some of these positions, he's like starting offensive line, he's like, that's the first 5. It's not our starters. We'll have another guy rotate in. We'll have multiple guys rotate in. Same thing with receiver and some other positions. But nothing really changed there. I guess it could be interesting. Does Keldrick Faulk get a few more snaps? Maybe who starts at linebacker could be interesting. Who trots out there first? Receiver, maybe. I mean, Jair Shorter started, but he was kind of a non-factor. I mean, I don't know that it was necessarily his fault. Be interesting to see if there's any shift there in terms of who trots out there first. Probably not. I think probably linebacker is going to be the main position you're wondering who starts and do the snaps changed. It was pretty much split across those 4 in game 1. Does that change in game 2? Everything else is pretty much the same. We saw Nehemiah Pritchett's practicing, Jalen McLeod's practicing, Jarquez Hunter's practicing, JD Rim's practicing, Nick Marner's practicing. So all the guys that were questionable are practicing. Now, Hunter's a different situation, and we're not sure if he'll play. I don't know yet. But the other guys, the thing to remember, though, a lot of those guys probably could have gone last Saturday. Hugh Freeze talked about that before the UMass game. He said they're questionable. He said they might try to go. So if that were Alabama, a bunch of those guys probably play. But they held them out. So I think there's a pretty good chance that all these guys will be available to play against Cal, and we'll at least give it a go. I think this is a little bit different type of game where if you can go. Marner might be one where you've got enough receivers where if he's not 100%, maybe he's one that you potentially could keep out another game. But if everybody else is healthy or 85 above %, then I think if you're Nehemiah Pritchett, you go. If you're Jalen McLeod, you go. JD Rim for some depth, you go. They need a lot of those guys for those depth reasons. So I think we'll see some of those guys back. I keep itching to see Jalen McLeod out there healthy. And he's not going to be 100% probably against Cal. I mean, it might take a few weeks. I don't know. I mean, I don't know when he'll be 100%, but man, I want to see him close to full speed and just see what he can do off the edge, because all we heard is just about how dangerous he is. And I just want to see it.
Yeah, if he really is that dangerous, and I think he is, and just based on his film, then you don't have to worry about, because the problem Saturday was having 4 rushers and not being able to get there. So you had to start blitzing. Well, if he's able to get there, that opens up so much more for you in coverage, right? Number one, it creates less time for the quarterback. Number two, you have one more guy in coverage or 2 more guys in coverage that you didn't have to worry about sending on a blitz just to get the quarterback off his timing. So, I mean, he's a game changer. He really
Yeah.
is a game changer for the defense. And that could bring the defense as a whole up such another level. I mean, it really could.
Yeah, I think so as well. I want to see what he's all about. I want to see Keldrick Faulk get a few more snaps. He seemed to be effective late when he played a little bit more.
Yeah,
Want to see if him get maybe a little bit more action in there as well. Want to see Rivaldo Fairweather get targeted a little bit. That'd be nice. He
definitely.
was pretty much. They didn't throw his way once. Same with Jair Shorter.
Camden,
Um,
Camden Brown.
Camden Brown.
We got
Camden
one
Brown got
target.
chewed out one time for missing a block that was on a screen pass that was just it. That's tough, man. When you're the big receiver on a screen like that, on just a quick throw outside, if you miss that
Yeah,
block, everybody in the world knows that you just messed up, and that is just the worst feeling for a receiver, because you're just standing there like, that's my bad.
yeah,
And it was on Auburn sideline, and Freeze was ticked. You can see Camden Brown just kind of like, that's my bad. But I
it's
want to see
tough.
Rivaldo Fairweather get a. They tried to go to hooks. They tried to throw the fade to hooks on the first drive. Looked like it was a little underthrown, maybe. I don't know. They were maybe a little prepared for it. Also, kind of looked like Hooks was pulled down a little bit by the UMass DB.
Yeah, I want to see a little bit more hooks. I want to see Shorter and Fairweather. Those are your 3 big guys. Those are the guys that Hugh Freeze loves. It's possible, being that he loves that so much and he loves the big receiver and the back shoulders and those things, that might have been one of the things he went, all right, let's hold off on that for right now. I don't want to show that yet, because they're big against tendencies. I can tell already. They don't want to be predictable,
Yeah.
and Auburn fans will love that, I think, for the most part. So he knows he's going to go to that a lot when he gets a chance in a big game. Let's not show it against UMass. I think that's probably has something to do with
Yeah.
it.
That's probably what I'm most intrigued about going into the Cal game is the passing game. Because when you hear Hugh Freeze say there's some things we thought we could take advantage of that we purposefully didn't, and you kind of look at who was targeted and who wasn't, it seems like there is a lot more in that passing game to be seen. At the same time, you also hear Hugh Freeze talk about they're still not understanding how to run routes,
Yeah.
spacing, landmarks, things that you're probably thinking, what's a landmark? What's a spacing? Well, for those guys, it's literally a landmark. There's spots on the field. There's based on the defense. There's places they need to be. That's all landmark is. It's simply a place that the receiver needs to be based on what the defense is running and where the quarterback knows they're going to be. And so that's stuff that's just football IQ stuff. That's stuff that takes time,
A lot.
understanding the scheme, understanding the coaches, and just playing a lot of college football, like just getting how to play the position. That's the part of being a great receiver that goes beyond being big, strong, and having good hands. It's like just getting it. And there's work to be
Yeah.
done there. So that whole passing operation is just still such a I don't know what it's going to look like in a month.
Well, a lot of that is when you talk about landmarks. Sometimes it's the numbers, it's the hashes, it's the pylons, it's the goalpost. This is your aiming point. This is where you're supposed to be positionally, because a lot of the plays that they ran were switch routes, is what I'm calling switch routes. It's when you have a guy lined up here and a guy lined up here, and they switch their routes. It looks like a cross or a scissors concept, and that changes your responsibility and where you're supposed to be. And sometimes they weren't in the right place, even when they weren't doing that. And it's an understanding thing and a repetition thing, and it's just not going to be done by game 1.
Yeah, repetition thing. That's the big one. So we'll see what kind of strides they make from week 1 to week 2, week 2 to week 3, And by the time they go to College Station, let's see where these guys are at, because it's going to be a point where there's the guys that understand that are going to play, and if there's more talented guys on the sideline, then so be it. They're going to play the guys that that are reading the defense the way the quarterback's reading it and are where they're supposed to be. Those are going to be the guys that are going to be out there, like Javaris Johnson, Jay Fair,
Right.
who Hugh Freeze called the most consistent and solid players, even going back to the spring. It's good to see them have a couple of good games.
Yeah.
I think Auburn's a 5. I think this point spread's crept up to 6.5 points now. It started at 5, 6.5. Probably will stay right in there as Auburn gets ready for this game against Cal. Any other thoughts before we get out of here?
No, not really. I just want to see, I want to see the defense. I want to know if the defense is going to be more aggressive in this situation, or are they going to back off some so they can stay in coverage and try to keep the top on the defense, kind of thing. That's going to be the biggest thing for me. You said the passing game for you. Mine is, how do they go about the defense with this, as far as play calling, blitzing, and things of that nature?
Yeah, it'll be interesting first quarter. I think interesting first quarter. A lot of newness for Auburn already. You toss in a cross-country road trip, late night start. I mean, their body clocks, it'll be 9:30.
Yeah.
And it'll just be a different environment, kind of one of those environments where there'll be, maybe 6,000 to 7,000 Auburn fans, but there won't be, it'll be kind of like going to play at Vanderbilt or sort of, it's like there'll be fans, but it won't be overwhelming. And so, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting the kind of the environment if Cal fans show up and it's Auburn and somehow they pop out with a big crowd, or if it's kind of their normal little 38,500, 40,000 type crowd. But I think that first quarter will be big. Just a little bit of jitters, probably first road game. A lot of these guys obviously transferring in, didn't play in Power 5 games, didn't come from a Power 5 school. And so I think there's just going to be a lot of maybe a little jitters in that first quarter, and you're going to need some of Auburn's veterans, I think, to come out strong, come out and play well right off the bat, get off to a good start. You don't want a team like Cal with a pretty good offense. You don't want them to gain momentum. You don't want to come out and go, oh, yeah, first quarter, 7-7. We're right here with these guys. That could happen, but you want to try to come out to a good start and not allow the underdog to hang around for too long.
Right.
All right, we'll wrap it up with that. Make sure at auburnlive.com and go check out game week coverage and recruiting coverage and all the stuff in between. We'll be back later in the week with the modcast, so make sure and go check that out on the Auburn Live YouTube channel. Subscribe, turn on notifications, listen to the podcast on Apple and Spotify and everywhere else. Go check out the modcast and the recruiting shows that are going on all week as well. So make sure you check all that stuff out. We'll have more from Hugh Freeze on the site as well. He speaks on the SEC teleconference, and make sure if you missed that, you caught what he said there as Auburn prepares to play Cal Saturday night, 7:30 local time, 9:30 Central on ESPN. All right. Quick shout out Session Cocktails, sponsor of the show. Appreciate them and their support. Go check them out, Magnolia Avenue next to Taco Mama, and go have some drinks there, some happy hour drinks there. Go have some drinks on Saturday, watch some college football. Go check them out. Have a good time. Go watch Alabama, Texas. That's at 6. That'd be a good one too. Watch Alabama, Texas, and then watch Auburn, Cal. It'd be a good little night of football. Some good ones. Ole Miss, Tulane is super interesting. That's cool.
Nebraska,
Tulane's
Colorado has become very interesting.
Yeah. And then what's the other one in conference play? I think there's one other interesting game. Now I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Mississippi State, Arizona, maybe.
Yeah, what was it? A&M goes to Miami.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
We'll see. Miami's obviously A&M's ranked. Miami's not. Don't know exactly what Miami is, but enough talent there probably to that'll be a good little trip for A&M. A tough game too.
Yeah.
To see what they're all about. All right, let's get out of here for Cole. I am Justin. We'll see you next time. Thanks.